There is a lot to break down in this chapter of Hunter x Hunter, and I want to add that we are literally at chapter 399, which seems absolutely crazy. We are going to see chapter 400 before the end of this year. That is wild. I didn't actually think we were going to see that at all. As I said, there is a lot to break down in this chapter. The Haley hideout is found, a new extremely interesting Nen ability, well, a couple of Nen abilities has been revealed, and Nobunaga and Henry's bromance is deepening even further. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. The chapter opens up where we left off in the last chapter, with our boy Nobunaga and Henry investigating the hideout looking for the Haley. And as they're investigating around the place, the relationship between the two seems to deepen, and honestly, I am still on the train of thought that Nobunaga is the next person to leave the troop, either by the way of sweet embrace of death or just leaving altogether. But this little bromance between Henry and Nobunaga is really nice to see, and it feels as if Nobunaga is somewhat filling the hole left from Uvagan with Henry, and with Henry being a fan of the troop overall, he's going to be more than receptive to this relationship deepening. But again, my theory here is that Nobunaga is being set up to be the next member of the troop to either die or leave. And I don't want him to die because I've recently rewatched the York New City arc, and it's made me appreciate his character so much more, especially after the Phantom Troupe flashback. But as the two move further throughout the hideout, they come across a room where there is a whole herd of Haley family members just sat vibing. And if I had to use one word to describe 80% of this chapter, I would say that word has to be uneasiness, because the room our two bros just moved through reminds me of something out of Saw, and considering they've entered this area completely unaware of the enemy's powers or tactics, they're at a big disadvantage right now. And as it stands, for me, it creates this massive sense of uneasiness when I was reading through the chapter. But our dynamic duo open up the door to this room, and it's filled with a bunch of members of the Haley just sat around the table talking about whether they prefer to unify or be a solitary unit, I guess. And honestly, I have zero idea for the context of this conversation could be, but my theory is that they're just doing this to make Henry and Nobunaga uneasy. Again, the sense of uneasiness is phenomenal throughout this chapter, because there's no way they don't see or hear that door opening and two dudes they've never seen before just standing there staring at them. But they continue to have their conversation after Henry shouts into them while they're having the conversation, and one of them even just nonchalantly just goes, "Who are these guys and why are they barging in like they own the place?" And the group just continues to have the conversation and continues to completely ignore the problem shouting at them from the doorway. But unfortunately for them, the problem in the doorway is completely okay with throwing hands, or in this case knives, and that's exactly what happens, because Henry and Nobunaga confirm with each other that this door could also be trapped, and similar to the last door, they decide to test it with a handy dandy stabby knife, and Henry yeets that bad boy into the room, and it seemingly stabs Terrabellum in the side of his head. Remember when I said lots of interesting powers revealed in this chapter? Yeah, this is one of them, because Terrabellum's Nen ability allows him to displace damage along with the attacking object. He takes the damage of whatever his right hand touches into himself and can then transfer that damage into whatever his left hand touches. However, it's only effective if he's touching the object the very moment any damage is taken, which if fully utilized correctly could kind of make Terrabellum immortal, but also at the same time is still very, very specific of an ability that could easily falter and get him killed. But again, the Haley have yet to realize just how deep the world of Nen can go and how to apply their abilities in more unique ways to make them even more fearsome in combat, with Nobunaga and Henry even mentioning at the end of the chapter that they seem like total amateurs, but their leader, Morena, isn't a total idiot. But Terrabellum stands up and pulls the knife out of the side of his head, and we see that the other end of the knife that went into his head came out of the side of the can that he was drinking from. It's obviously burst the can, and Nobunaga notes that straight off the bat they run into someone incompatible straight away, which is my main fear for Nobunaga, right? Because even though he's a master of Nen, there will always be the chance that he will come across a Nen user that is perfect against him specifically, and that is the way of just Nen battles in the world of Hunter x Hunter, unfortunately. But this is where things get really, really interesting, because Henry throws a second knife into the room, and Terrabellum evades it this time, but one of the guys at the table sees a knife hurtling towards him and wonders if he'll be able to heal the wound it inflicts, which tells us obviously that this dude has a healing ability. But what's more funny to me is how much of an idiot this guy is to even consider consider this. He has no idea what this knife could do once it makes contact or pierces through his skin, and he's willing to find out just to see if he could heal it. In a world where people can create pocket dimensions and yoink people out of existence, summon unkillable nen beasts, and this man just wants to fuck around and find out with a knife that, for all he knows, may explode upon impact and instantly kill him. Luckily, his friend has some common sense and stops the knife with, by the way, an issue of Weekly Shonen Jump, which I think is a really funny little Easter egg. This guy is an absolute idiot, but then this guy who saves him refers to the dude who was holding his hand out as the organ, which again is a very sinister and weird name considering the Haley or a bunch of psychopaths, but honestly I have no idea as to why he's being referred to as the organ. But what we do know is that it has something to do with Morena, and for whatever reason she needs him to be alive and to keep his head down. So whatever Morena is plotting involves this dude, and I'm wondering if it's because of this healing ability that he is talking about. If he's being referred to as the organ, Morena might be trying to keep him around as basically the team's medical center. If one person is being used to basically act as the entire hideout's defense, it would make sense to me that Morena would also place a similar sort of role and responsibility upon another dude who has a healing ability in this case. And I wonder if that's why he's being called the organ. And it's not an organ as in a literal sense of him being an organ, but just more of a case of he might be able to replace organs. Who knows? But it's at this point we're introduced to a wonderful little guy known as Yokotani, who introduces himself to the pair Nobunaga and Henry, and they have a little discussion where Henry basically tries to trick Yokotani into finding out where the location of the place they are in, basically. However, Yokotani, being the legal advisor for the Haley family, is a bit more savvy than that and politely declines to inform Henry of their whereabouts, basically. And this is where Nobunaga wastes zero time and literally yeets his sword at Yokotani's forehead, seemingly making contact with the legal advisor's brain box here, which is when we learn that the ability of Terebellum is also being used to once again transfer the damage from Yokotani's head into himself, and Nobunaga notices that Terebellum is bleeding, and this is because his left hand wasn't touching anything when the damage happened. Terebellum could be incredibly useful when he learns the use of this power more later on down the line. In theory, if Terebellum were to constantly carry supply of objects for his hand, be somewhat invincible, similar to how Chrollo constantly keeps a hold of the Skill Hunter book for his ability to work. Terebellum would be able to just keep a small supply of small objects that could take damage, something that was small but durable. I can't really think of an example right now, but something that was small and durable that he could carry on himself, that he could constantly keep hold of in his left hand to transfer damage over to his right hand, and then all he would have to worry about was being able to touch the object with his right hand to transfer that damage out. But this is where we get another useful ability revealed to us. Yokotani activates his Nen ability and summons a bunch of invincible toy robots to quote-unquote remove Henry and Nobunaga from the premises, and this ability is explained to work like so. It's a defensive ability only usable in the hideout while Morena is present, and that's key information here because our guys Henry and Nobunaga don't know that Morena is chilling inside of this hideout. They are just assuming that this is a hideout filled with Haley members, but they don't know that Morena is actually here, which confirms to us, the reader, that Morena was there, and now we have a location in place for the rest of the troop and Haley and the Hxh family to move on the Haley hideout. But this ability activates when Yokotani introduces himself to unlawful intruders. The conjured guard cannot harm the intruders, but the intruders' attacks also have no effect on these robots. And the more serious the crime committed, the more elite guards are created, which in theory Yokotani can create an entire platoon of robots to essentially evict anyone. And there's most likely multiple ways around the ability. One of the first ones would be to murder this man before he even says anything, because the ability relies on him introducing himself. So if he was to come across someone who's particularly known for instant kill murdering people, for example a certain murder clown like Hisoka, this ability is going to fail flat on its face before he even gets started. But it also made me wonder if he has to introduce himself every time. For example, Henry and Nobunaga have now been escorted from the premises. The next time that they appear in the hideout, will they have to be reintroduced to Yokotani? Will Yokotani have to reintroduce himself to the gang? Or will these robots just immediately spawn and again evict the two because of his ability? It does raise a few questions here, and there's a few maybe grey areas. But lots of unique and interesting abilities in this chapter, and honestly, I'm happy with the way that it ended, with Nobunaga and Henry being escorted out of the hideout with minimal damage and no deaths, thank God. But it's also important to note that Nobunaga's sword was actually confiscated by these robots, leaving him in an even more dangerous spot should he run into a certain Mr. Hisoka who is lurking somewhere around the ship. But overall, overall, the chapter gave this real sense of uneasiness, and I'm glad it ended with Nobunaga alive, and we can breathe a sigh of relief, and Henry even managed to get a locator inside of the hideout. So at least our boys can now come away with a minor W from this little escapade, and it wasn't all for nothing. I imagine in the next chapter we'll probably see the troop moving in on the hideout with the Haley family, which could result in a major battle on the ship. But that is everything from me. Let me know what you thought of the chapter in the comments down below. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did enjoy the video, and if you want to support me and the channel even further, consider becoming a member for some extra juicy benefits. But that is everything from me. I'll catch you all in the next one. Much love, big kisses, bye bye.